It was supposed to be an ordinary night. A family tucked inside their home, their security system armed, their minds at ease. Outside, the world was quiet, the air heavy with the promise of a storm. But as the clock ticked toward midnight, something shifted. Somewhere down the street, a man waited in the shadows. He wasn't there by accident. He wasn't there by chance. Every step, every decision had been calculated. This wasn't just a burglary. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was premeditation at its purest form. When investigators would later ask how the alarm never sounded, how the house had been breached so quietly, the answer was chilling in its simplicity. The alarm never went off because he cut the power. Viewers, tonight we begin a story that dives deep into the psychology of a planner, a predator, and the devastating aftermath of a crime that should have never happened. White right pointing backhand index, stay with us as we peel back each layer of this case, one shocking detail at a time. He wasn't the kind of man you'd notice in a crowd. No flashy car, no striking clothes. Just average. Forgettable. And that was exactly how he wanted it. For weeks, he studied the family's routine. He knew when the lights flicked off at night, when the kids left for school, when the parents worked late. He learned their habits like clockwork, while hiding in plain sight. Neighbors later admitted they had seen him once or twice, sitting in a parked car, walking his dog near their home. Nothing alarming, nothing worth reporting. But behind that bland exterior was a mind constantly turning, planning, anticipating. Every scenario had been played out in his head. He knew where the cameras were, where the weak spots lay. And most importantly, he knew the alarm system was his biggest obstacle. So he devised a plan, a way to neutralize it without alerting anyone inside. The family had no idea that their ordinary, suburban street had become the hunting ground of a man obsessed with control. The family's security system was modern, reliable, and always armed. To outsiders, it seemed impenetrable. But this man wasn't like everyone else. He studied not just people, but systems. He understood how alarms worked, how wires ran, and where vulnerabilities existed. After weeks of watching, he spotted it, a utility box near the back of the house. Unprotected, exposed, the beating heart of the home's power supply. It was there, under the cover of darkness, that he practiced, testing the timing, learning how quickly he could pull the breaker, mapping the blind spots where no one could see him. He knew the family trusted that alarm. They believed it would protect them. What they didn't know was that their greatest sense of safety had already been dismantled in the mind of a man who was 2 steps ahead. The weak point had been found, and soon he would strike. The night before the attack was eerily calm. Rain tapped gently on the windows, the smell of wet earth drifting through the air. Inside the home, laughter filled the living room. The kids argued over which movie to watch, while their parents curled up on the couch. To them, this was safety. Home. But not far away, he sat in his car, notebook in hand, watching from a distance. His notes were meticulous, entry points, escape routes, even backup plans if something went wrong. He knew tomorrow was the night. The final rehearsal was over. For the family, it was a night of peace. For him, it was the calm before the storm. It was past midnight when he moved. Gloved hands, black clothing, steady breath. He approached the house with the precision of someone who had done this 100 times before. At the back corner of the property, he found the utility box. One swift motion, one sharp click, and darkness swallowed the home. Inside, the family stirred. The sudden loss of light jolted them awake. But no alarm sounded. No piercing siren. Just silence. And that silence was more terrifying than any sound they could have imagined. The hunter was inside their world now, and they didn't even know it yet. The father stumbled from bed, fumbling for a flashlight. Power outage, he whispered to his wife. Must be the storm. But as he peered outside, his stomach dropped. The neighborhood lights were still on. Street lamps glowed, houses shone with warmth. Their home was the only one plunged into darkness. His mind raced. Something was wrong. Before he could process it, a creak echoed from the hallway. The unmistakable sound of weight pressing against the floorboards. Someone was inside. The mother clutched her children, pulling them close. The father grabbed the nearest object for protection, his heart pounding in his chest. The silence was suffocating. Each second stretched into eternity. And then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving closer. The children began to cry, their muffled sobs only adding to the dread. They had always trusted the alarm, believed it would save them. But in the most critical moment, it had betrayed them. They weren't alone. And the man who had cut the power was now inside. The father stepped into the hallway, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Who's there?" he shouted, voice cracking under the weight of fear. No answer, just the sound of breathing. Heavy. Close. The beam of light cut through the darkness and landed on a figure dressed in black. A mask concealed his face, but his eyes burned with something cold. For the first time, the family understood. This wasn't random. This wasn't chance. This man had come for them, and he had planned every second of it. The intruder raised a hand, not to strike, but to show dominance. He was calm. Too calm. "Sit down," he ordered. His voice was steady, commanding. He wasn't improvising. He was following a script. The family obeyed, fear locking them in place. Every detail had been planned. From the cut wires to the moment he stepped inside, he was always one step ahead. But what he didn't plan for, what he could never fully control, was the chaos of human fear. The children, the panic, the desperate urge to survive. And in that chaos, the smallest detail could unravel everything. As he forced the family into the living room, his confidence radiated. He believed nothing could go wrong. But in his obsession with control, he overlooked something small, something crucial. When he cut the power, he assumed the silence meant safety. But what he didn't realize was that a backup system had triggered elsewhere. A silent alarm, connected not to the house, but to the monitoring company. Help was already on the way. And while he believed he was fully in control, the clock had already started ticking. Unbeknownst to the intruder, miles away a monitoring system had already detected the cut power. The moment he yanked the breaker, a signal was sent. It wasn't loud. It wasn't visible. But it was immediate. The monitoring company placed a call to the home. No answer. A second attempt. Still silence. Protocol was clear. Dispatch the police. While he toyed with the family inside, convinced he had total control, squad cars were already cutting through the rain-soaked streets. Time was no longer his ally. It was his enemy. Inside the home, the intruder paced like a conductor orchestrating his masterpiece. He believed his dominance was absolute. But fear has a strange effect on people. At first, it paralyzes. Then, it transforms. The father's trembling slowed. The mother's protective instincts sharpened. Even the children, though terrified, began to sense that survival meant more than obeying. Whispers passed between them when his back was turned. Tiny plans. Silent communication. The family who had been prey was beginning to resist. And resistance was the one variable he hadn't fully accounted for. He demanded valuables. Jewelry. Cash. Electronics. Anything that could be taken quickly. The mother complied, her hands shaking as she pulled a necklace from her drawer. But she stalled, deliberately buying time. He grew impatient. His tone sharpened, his movements quickened. For the first time, his calm facade began to crack. What he didn't realize was that with every extra second he spent inside, his carefully built timeline was collapsing. Outside, 2 police cruisers rolled silently toward the street. Officers killed their lights and parked at a distance, assessing the situation. The hunter had no idea he was already surrounded. While the intruder argued with the parents, one of the children spotted something. A cell phone left charging on the kitchen counter. The boy's hands shook, but he remembered his father's whispered instructions. If you get a chance, run. Heart pounding, he slipped from the couch and darted toward the kitchen. The masked man spun, shouting. But it was too late. The boy grabbed the phone and bolted toward the back hallway. The intruder roared in rage, chasing after him. But in that brief chaos, the father lunged. For the first time that night, control shifted. The father tackled the intruder, knocking the flashlight from his hands. The room exploded into confusion. Shouts, screams, the sound of fists colliding in the dark. The mother grabbed her children, pulling them toward the corner. Furniture crashed. A lamp shattered. The intruder fought back with brutal force. He wasn't just strong, he was trained. Every strike was deliberate, practiced. The father realized this wasn't the man's first time in a fight. But then, flashing red and blue lights pierced through the window. The police had arrived. 2 officers approached the house with weapons drawn. They could hear the chaos inside, the screaming, the struggle. They moved quickly, announcing their presence. Police, drop it. Step away. The intruder froze for a split second. His entire plan, weeks of preparation, crumbled in an instant. He had calculated the alarm system, the timing, the entry points. But he had never accounted for the backup call. Now, the predator was the one cornered. But he wasn't ready to surrender. Grabbing a shard of broken glass, he pressed it against the father's throat, dragging him back as a shield. His eyes darted wildly, no longer calm, no longer calculated, just desperate. "Back off, or he dies," he shouted at the officers. The children screamed. The mother sobbed. The entire room shook with tension. The officers held their ground, voices steady. They knew one wrong move could mean tragedy. And yet, the intruder underestimated one last thing: the courage of a family fighting for survival. As he shouted threats, the father made eye contact with his wife. A silent agreement passed between them. In one explosive move, he jerked his body, slamming the intruder off balance. The glass slipped, cutting his own skin but missing anything fatal. That split second was all the officers needed. A deafening command, a swift tackle, and the intruder was ripped to the ground. The struggle ended with handcuffs locking around his wrists. For the first time all night, the house was filled with something other than fear, relief. In the days that followed, investigators pieced together the full extent of his plan. Notebooks filled with details, maps of the neighborhood, timelines broken into minutes. He had even written out escape scenarios if the police ever came. But one thing stood out most, the phrase scribbled on a page: "Control everything. Leave nothing to chance." And yet, chance had been his undoing. The silent call, the child's bravery, the father's resistance, factors he could never fully predict. The family had survived because of courage, resilience, and a small flaw in a predator's perfect plan. The case left the community shaken. Neighbors began checking their security systems, questioning how safe they truly were. Experts called it a textbook case of premeditation, a chilling reminder that some criminals don't act on impulse. They prepare, they study, they wait. But in the end, no plan is flawless. Evil can be clever, evil can be patient, but evil cannot control every outcome. For the family, survival meant more than fighting off an intruder. It meant proving that courage, unity, and determination can break even the most carefully laid plan. White right pointing backhand index viewers. What do you think? Was this man's obsession with control his downfall? And how can we better protect ourselves from those who plan so meticulously? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Bell, if you found this story as chilling as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive here on True Crime Hub.